I'm Todd Bookman, a reporter at New Hampshire Public Radio. For the last 6 months, I've been thinking a lot about a cat named Sergeant Tibbs, who goes missing, who's then found, and who would land at the center of so much human pain, anger, and confusion.
It's not about the cat anymore. It's just about everything else.
The Final Days of Sergeant Tibbs, a new podcast from NHPR about what we owe our pets and each other. Listen now wherever you get your podcasts.
Thumbtack presents the ins and outs of caring for your home. Out, uncertainty, self-doubt, stressing about not knowing where to start. In, plans and guides that make it easy to get home projects done. Out, word art. Sorry, live, laugh, lovers. In, knowing what to do, when to do it, and who to hire. Start caring for your home with confidence. Download Thumbtack today.
This cold and flu season, Instacart is here to help deliver all of your sick day essentials. Whether you're in prevention mode and need vitamins, hand sanitizer, and that lemon tea your Nana swears by, or you're in healing mode and need medicine, soup, and a lot more tissues. Simply download the Instacart app to get sick day supplies that reinvigorate or relieve delivered in as fast as 30 minutes. Plus, enjoy $0 delivery fees on your first 3 orders. Excludes restaurant orders. Service fees and terms apply.
You can support this podcast at patreon.com/partnersincrimemedia.
I'm Rebecca Lavoie, and this is Crime Writers On. Crime Writers On is the original true crime review podcast that digs into true crime, pop culture, other podcasts. And on this episode, a young woman's life falls apart when she's harassed on her phone and online. Is her professional mentor behind it? We'll review the podcast Stalked from BBC Sounds. Joining me to get that done and more is true crime author, TV journalist, and host of These Are Their Stories podcast, my husband, love of my life, Ken Flynn. Hi, Ken.
Hey, actually,
What?
When I was like a toddler, apparently I couldn't say Kevin.
Yeah.
So apparently I would call myself Tin.
Oh, Tin Flynn.
Tin, yeah. Or was it Tin? Yeah, I would. Apparently it took a while, and my uncle finally said to my mother, like, how long until this kid learns his fucking name?
Yeah.
So
is he stupid?
It was kind of, was he stupid? This kid sounds like he's trying to give red wine pairings to people like in the store.
I hate it when grandparents choose the names that they want their grandkids to call them. I want to be called Peepaw. Like, no, their kid's going to call you what they want to call you. For God's sakes. I find that.
But don't you have to introduce yourself
annoying.
to
Yes, like
your mom going to say, "This is Mommy's mommy." Yeah,
come up with a name.
So, listeners, if you want to come up with a name for me when I eventually have grandchildren that my grandchild should call me, tell me, and then I will definitely not use it.
Granny. What is the oldest sounding one?
Reb Ma.
Yeah. I mean, if that's a thing for you, no problem. It's just not a thing for me. I don't get it. All right. Also with us is private investigator, certified pet detective, resident cat lady, and author of the Piper Green series of cozy mysteries.
And future Mima,
Laura Bricker.
Oh,
hi,
God.
Laura Bricker.
Hey, yeah, let's hope not. I think I've got a few years left. And back to that mispronunciation. We used to have a town official in Exeter when I covered meetings for the newspaper, and he couldn't say facility, so he would always say fixility.
Oh,
we've got to build a new fixility. And I'd be like, bah! Did nobody ever tell him that's not how you say facility?
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Yeah. It's like library.
did he want to build a new library?
Yeah. The other thing is there's no eggs in Exeter. That's my other thing. I hate it when I turn on like the Channel 9 news and they're like, we're in Exeter tonight. I'm like, no, you're in Exeter tonight.
Oh, yes. Well, you got to stand up for how your town name is pronounced.
Man.
I know, right? We're such assholes. There's so many more important things happening in the world, and I'm like, I don't like it when grandmas name themselves.
We're cutting down. We're cutting down proper nouns like they're poppies in a field.
And finally, our resident doubting Thomas, author of the City trilogy of novels, host of Rip Current, Strange Arrivals, and our Patreon Deep Dive Book Club podcast host, Toby Ball. Hi, Peepaw.
Hey, whatever you want me to call you.
Gramps.
Kevin.
Yeah.
So what's coming up on Monday's show? This is obviously Thursday's podcast.
Yeah, next week on Monday, we're going to talk about the podcast Once Upon a Con.
All right. So, Kevin, are you thinking about what you're going to make our inevitable grandchildren call you?
I already know.
What?
I'm saving it.
Oh,
Kevy.
yeah. Okay. You're saving it.
Grandpa Kevy.
They're going to call you Ump.
Ump. Hey.
Or Blue.
Hey, Blue.
Blue.
Blue hair.
Blue hair. That's what they're going to call you.
I have to tell you, I have been thinking about this kind of stuff, though, because as you may know, listeners, and as you guys know, my son is getting married. Mm-hmm. And I was invited to go wedding dress shopping with my future daughter-in-law last weekend.
Oh.
Yeah. This stuff is on my mind, man.
Nice.
They're starting their own family at some point. I mean, by the two of them, I mean their own family. But like...
There's Rebecca and Lily.
Yes.
And Maya's mom and her sister.
Yes.
And they just... they went to... Where was this bridal shop?
It was in Salem.
Right. Wasn't it like behind a...
Oh, it was so weird.
Yeah.
I will say, and I'm just going to say this first, it ended up being a super nice shop. So I'm not throwing shade at the shop.
You would know because you sold wedding dresses.
I used to work in bridal. Yeah, it's a super beautiful, like lovely, high-ceilinged salon with only one line of dresses, which I loved because the fewer the choices, the better, in my opinion, honestly, for wedding dress type stuff. Mm-hmm. But it was like in Salem, New Hampshire, across the street from a car wash, behind this little house that had been turned into a hair salon. And like it was above like a carburetor shop. You had to like walk up these stairs to get there. And so you're in this dirt parking lot. And I'm like, oh, poor Maya. Like she thought she picked this great place. And here we are. It's just like really weird. Everyone goes and knocks on the salon door because it says bridal salon. And you don't know what the fuck is going on.
Wow.
And the ladies very crankily like, go up those stairs. And I'm like, you should just put a sign on your door saying this is not the bridal place. Anyway, and then we went in and it was lovely. It was super lovely. And I did get my car washed at that car wash place because I cannot drive past a car wash. Anyone who knows me knows that. I love getting my car washed. I just got a subscription for a car wash this week.
You should come to Exeter because we have the craziest car wash. It's called the Golden Nozzle.
That's what I just signed up for. We have a Golden Nozzle in Concord.
All these lights like an amusement park ride.
That's right.
A disco car wash.
It's a manned car wash because they spray. But you can get it.
The Golden Nozzle.
But you can get a subscription.
You want to go on Friday night down to the Golden Nozzle and get some dinner after.
Listen to this. I'm sorry. So Golden Nozzle is not sponsoring the show. But for $19.99, you can get unlimited bottom level car washes. And for $27.99 a month, you can get unlimited premium car washes. I get my car washed so often that like I'll spend that like in a week sometimes if it's salty out or whatever. So I'm like, I'm going to go to that car wash fucking every day because I can.
You know how many times I've driven a car through a car wash?
How many? Oh
What,
my
0?
God. So is your car just bunky or does your wife do it for you?
My car is, it lives its
He
life.
washes his own car.
I love a clean car. I got to say.
Everyone's, sometimes like in the summer when my kids will get a hose out and do it, but
Yeah.
It rains enough.
Yeah.
at this point I feel so I wouldn't be too clear on what to do and feel like I'm too old to ask for help. So
There's literally a sign.
I probably never
Toby.
will.
The touchless one. Go to the touchless one.
Yeah,
the Golden
Grandpa.
Nozzle is not touchless, by the way. That's a one downside of it, but it's fun. And it sounds like a porno.
It does. So we were just talking about car washes because I just got new skis because my old skis, when they went to get tuned, they're all looking at them going, what the hell is wrong with your skis? They're like warped. They're bubbled. Somebody really fucked your skis up. And I'm like, must have been the person who tuned them. And then my son, Will, outed me. He goes, Mom, no, it was that time you drove through the car wash with your skis on top of your car.
Yeah.
And then you put them in your garage for 3 years after. I was like, oh, oops.
Yeah, that could have been it.
I know Hannah and Carole are like, what the fuck podcast is this?
I know. I know.
We've
All
talked
right.
for 8 minutes about bullshit.
Car washes.
Yeah.
Anyway, well, this is what happens when you get me on my car wash thing. I'm so into it.
Usually it's
All
not a
right.
great sign for what we're reviewing, to be quite
Well,
honest.
sometimes it is, sometimes it isn't, and sometimes this could be mixed. Just going to say that as a spoiler. All right. Should we talk about the podcast or should we be talking about Kevin?
Yeah, let's do it.
Let's go ahead and drop that first clip right now. Leading off.
Hannah was working in what's called the designer showrooms, a place brands make connections with potential buyers.
My job was literally to network around the room and make contact with international buyers.
While breaking into the world of fashion, 25-year-old Hannah Mossman Moore is befriended by a well-connected middle-aged man from Hong Kong who mentors her and shows her the high life. At the same time, Hannah begins receiving unending menacing messages online and on her phone from a stranger she can't escape.
I really did feel like someone on the street was watching me.
Hi, Hannah Mossman Moore.
Because that's what he'd say.
Finally saw you. You look good in blonde hair. Why no meeting me? Still angry? Tell me, please.
Her rich friend denies involvement, claiming he's also been targeted by hackers. With the police unable to make a case, Hannah turns to a journalist to help identify the anonymous intruder who has turned her life upside down.
It's been 4 years since Hannah first opened up to me and told me the whole story. Yet we're still trying to make sense of what's been happening to her.
What's so dangerous is that you don't know.
In the podcast Stalked from BBC Sounds and Radio 5 Live, Hannah teams up with her ex-stepmother, journalist Carole Cadwalladr, to investigate in real time who was behind the elaborate campaign of harassment. They employ everything from IP address tracing to linguistic forensics to unmask the person obsessed with her. Spoiler alert, we're going to be talking about plot points from the first 5 episodes of Stalked. So if you want to remain spoiler-free, go to the estimated time code in our show notes for our thumbs up or thumbs down reviews. I'll just say for clarification at the beginning of this review that Carole was not actually married to Hannah's father. So technically,
they explain how weird it is.
She's not her ex-stepmother, but that's how she refers to herself in the beginning of the podcast, as I am your ex-stepmother, but there's no name for that. And I'm like, well, there kind of is. Like dad's ex-girlfriend. Like you could just say that.
Oh, yeah, there it goes.
Anyway, clearly they're close, right, Kevin?
Yes.
What do you think of this idea that this young friend, sort of ex-relative of this very prominent journalist, by the way, I actually have heard of Carole before because I followed the stories that she's done in the past.
Cambridge Analytica, right?
Yeah, Cambridge Analytica was her big one.
Yeah.
That she actually goes to her and that they work on this together. And Hannah is also in the introductions. I am Carole and I am Hannah. So what do you think of this format?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's very unusual that they would make Hannah a co-host instead of a guest. And she's in the credits, right? Because in theory, it provides Hannah with editorial access that a subject normally wouldn't have. Shocking, heartbreaking, transformative, anyone? And they don't really reveal that till the credits at the end of episode 1. So, like, not perfectly transparent there, but they do explain it. And they do also show, like, there's this creative tension that at some points they do need to make Hannah feel uncomfortable in order to do the work. So they seem to have found sort of like that right balance between, like, independence or collaboration, at least in a front-facing way, but that is unusual.
I think it's pretty clear, though, that Carole believes Hannah. She doesn't think Hannah's full of shit or something like that. Yeah.
But, you know.
So it's not, totally. But at the same time, I think she wants to help her, which is an interesting dynamic. She legitimately wants to help her. And she thinks that making this podcast might help solve it.
Make her the co-host of her story, right? But, I mean, that's what they chose to do.
Well, she probably gets paid a different rate if they do that. Let's be real. She can't get paid as a source.
Well, I mean, so she's getting paid, an amount larger than zero.
That actually occurred to me. It's like, you're going to collaborate with me, work on me with all this whole time. Like, you should be paid for your time. And the way to do that is to put you in the credits of the show.
So this is shocking, heartbreaking, transformative.
But we don't know that for sure. I'm supposing that. Okay. I don't know that for sure. So, Toby, I'm just going to throw my hands on the table. I've read all of your notes. I think I like this podcast way more than the rest of you like it. But you have to admit, the first couple of episodes where they unpack what happened to Hannah when she's involved with this guy, Kin, it's pretty befuddling, right?
Yeah, I mean, I thought the first 3 episodes were excellent. It's like a Harlan Coben or one of those people novels where it's just like this completely confounding situation where you think you have a handle on it, but there's certain things that just don't make sense. And I think we'll probably go into this more, but the idea that this guy Kin is probably sort of cyber stalking Hannah, but at the same time, like, she's around when he's getting not exactly cyber stalked, but sort of cyber extorted, I guess. So it is this kind of thing where it's like, what could possibly be the answer? And up to the point where we've listened, I don't think that has been sort of conclusively decided. So hopefully that's coming later in the season. But yeah, I mean, the first part of it just sort of reads like one of those like airport novels where it's just kind of whipping along and it's sort of the bright lights and big city and going to all these glamorous places. But there's also this veneer of danger and this strange relationship between this young woman and this older man and what each one is sort of trying to get out of it, I guess. Again, it felt very much like listening to somebody sort of describe in great detail a novel that they'd read. Yeah.
It's interesting. I saw that note you wrote about it as being like a Harlan Coben book TV show come to life. I didn't realize you meant that in a positive way because I fucking love Harlan Coben books. They're so bad and I love them so much. I love him so much. I love his book so much. And you were 100% hitting the nail on the head with that. This reads exactly like one of those Harlan Coben books. Now, Laura, you also had thoughts about Hannah being involved in this along with Carole. Do you want to explore with me like your thinking about what might be complicated around that?
Yeah, I think what's complicated for me about that is that I question, like, how can you objectively edit and trim and call out certain parts of the story if you need to do that, if she's involved in the level that she's involved at? You know, I'm like, okay, it's good to have somebody that's a cooperative interview subject, which obviously this is, and they have this relationship. But like, and obviously, you know, her stepmother is a very, you know, seasoned journalist and knows what she's doing and all of that. So I'm not saying it, but I just wonder about, like, because of that relationship, if they stay away from certain things or because she's involved. Like, there was the one scene where they're asking about, well, like, did you ever actually do anything with this guy sexually? And she's just like, you know, I was really drunk a few times, but I don't want to say anything about that.
Was there ever anything physical or romantic or intimate or whatever between you in Florida or any time before?
There were a couple of times that I was so drunk, and that's all I want to say on it. But we definitely were not in a romantic relationship.
Unlike Toby, I thought the first couple episodes were just like drawn out, that were super repetitive. And I felt like it was like, don't kill your darlings. She wants to tell her whole story and we're going to let her tell her whole story, even though it's going on. And I'm like, I've heard this story before, you know?
A sexual encounter would be an important motivating factor, right? But, you know.
But the relationship was...
I'm not saying that that's what happened, but I'd say, like, you know, you're right, Laura. That is worth exploring because the listener's going to have that question about why would, if it is kin, why would this platonic relationship turn into this weird obsession?
Yeah. Well, I'll just say that Laura, I love what you said just now because it really brings home to me how we can all receive things so differently. Not just whether it's our taste or not. I loved the protracted Hannah unfolding narrative stuff because they were very transparent about what Hannah was like as a young person. People thought she was better off than she was in terms of like class and stuff. And so she always found herself in these situations that other young people wouldn't find themselves in. And then she did land this internship in fashion. And she clearly is the kind of person that attracts other people. Like, she's dynamic, she's attractive, and they're very open about that. And I loved that it was like, she develops this relationship with this guy that clearly seems one-sided and very beneficial to her for a very long time. We're not talking like they met twice and then all of a sudden it was wild. Like, they knew each other for a couple of years. He gave her furniture for her apartment. They had lunch when she was in town. He went to visit her in the hospital when she was sick. And it seemed super, if not normal, like a super not unhealthy older person, younger person kind of interaction, like the kind of thing I could imagine having myself. Maybe I did have myself when I was in my 20s. And the fact that it then turned super weird, which is why I think all the earlier stuff was important. It's just how I received it.
Yeah.
I think that's interesting. So Kevin, there are a lot of stalker podcasts, right?
Yeah. I mean, the issue with stalking podcasts, as we hear in this podcast, is that this crime is all too common and our feeds are filled with a ton of them. Like we were saying before, I think there are 10 or 12 other podcasts just called Stalked, right? Which is not to diminish the importance or the seriousness of it. But as far as telling stories in the podcast world or journalism or in publishing, you've got to hit us with incidents that are not only story-worthy, as opposed to, if you can call them that, rudimentary cases of stalking. But now you have to come up with ones that are distinguishable from the other story-worthy incidents. I don't want to say you have to keep topping the story. It's very much the same way with con artist stories and serial killer stories and all these other stories. You don't want to say, we've heard this before. What do I get that's new? There is some interesting new stuff here. I don't know if it's throughout, but it's part of the challenge of doing any podcast like this, is that you have to keep the listener engaged.
Well, you're always going to get interesting new stuff on our Patreon, right, Kevin?
Oh my God, you just pushed us right into that.
I did. We're in the business section now. Hey, Carole and Hannah, here's the part of the podcast where we basically try to sell other stuff we do. What do we got going on our Patreon, Kevin?
All right, if you go to patreon.com/Partners in Crime Media, you get all sorts of exclusive podcasts, over 750 episodes there, which keep you very busy. We probably have more exclusive podcasts than the BBC.
Yeah.
I don't know that for certain. I'm not going to,
No.
I'm not going to, that's not the hill I'm dying on.
But they're not funded by ads outside this country.
No, they are not our Patreon. But we do have a lot of great international listeners who like to listen to things like the Crime Writers on After Show, Toby Ball's Deep Dive Book Club podcast, our Married with Podcast Relationship Advice podcast, and Rebecca's always breaking news updates on the Karen Reed trial in the Readathon. You also can get Laura Bricker's Leave It to Bricker podcast, and if you join us at the Let's Do What We Do level, you'll get episodes of Crime Writers on early and ad-free. So, Toby Ball, the next recording of the Deep Dive, and that's exclusive for patrons at the Deep Dive level, they're going to get to see your discussion of the book Eden Undone. Who's joining you?
Joining me is Suzanne Rico, who you remember from The Man Who Calculated Death. Bridget Keown, who is a professor at the University of Pittsburgh. Boston Globe books editor Kate Tuttle. And Allison Horrocks, who is a national park ranger and the host of the American Girl podcast.
All right.
That's a quality panel right there.
Suzanne Rico. That's very exciting. I love her.
Her debut.
Let's see how she'll do. She's never been on a podcast before,
Big
right?
moment for her, I'm sure.
Big moment for her.
Could be career making.
Yes.
Or breaking. Hey, another way you can support us is we have an Amazon storefront where you can see some of our favorite things. Rebecca, what are this week's Amazon recommendations?
Gloves, Kevin.
Gloves.
Whenever I lose my gloves or lose one of my 2 gloves, I just go on Amazon and look up camel-colored gloves. I actually bought 2 pairs of camel-colored gloves this week, Kevin. One of them is chenille, and one of them is fleece-lined wool, and they were each like $7. Gloves. That's my recommendation.
That's a good price for the remainder of winter. I like
exactly.
that.
They were like 50% off. So.
Oh, wow. Okay. And Toby Ball, can you tell us what are your listener-inspired Toby Ball's deep cut recommendations?
Well, I got some good news. I got some bad news.
Oh.
The good news, the fun one, is the Sea Roomy Burritos Tortilla Blanket.
No. Hey, I got bad news for you. That was last week's.
All right. So the almost as good news we have is Barbie doll. Did you do this one? Barbie
No, we didn't do the
doll
Barbie
and
doll.
playset pet boutique with 4 pets, color change grooming feature, and 20 plus. That means more than 20 themed accessories.
Wow. It's like the golden nozzle, but for Barbie pets.
Sort of, I guess.
Somebody's like, not only did they replace me, they replaced my deep cut recommendations.
It's sort of in the, I don't know what I think about this. 120 packs of 500cc food grade oxygen absorbers.
Oh.
10-pack and individual vacuum bag. Oxygen absorbers for long-term food storage with oxygen indicator. Look, we need to keep the oxygen in the air. We're
but not around your food.
We're trying
apparently.
to keep the carbon out of the air. We're trying to keep the oxygen in the air. So this feels like we're moving in the wrong direction. It's sort of like if you get this and a mosquito magnet, you are basically like doing your bit to warm the globe.
Oh.
So
yeah,
I don't like to take our viewers to task, but whoever got this, it's time to do some soul searching.
They're ruining the planet by being able to not waste food. Is that
There's
what you're
120
there?
packs of 500 cc's. You know what that ends up being?
No.
A fuck bunch of cc's.
25. Yeah.
It's like 60,000 cc's of oxygen just taken straight out of our atmosphere.
Yeah.
Wow.
My
You're really throwing
goodness.
some shade at that listener.
Well, maybe they don't know.
But no shade at the listener buying the plastic toy that comes with 20 plus pieces.
Is that taking oxygen out of the air?
No.
No, it's putting plastic in the ocean.
It's going to end up
fine.
in a garbage
That's fine.
patch.
We're gonna need to have these patches of plastic to live on when the sea rises.
That's true.
Yeah.
That's true.
It's gonna be the only viable ground.
Yeah.
If you want Toby to consider your Amazon purchase as a deep cut
Make a
recommendation,
morally
If you want
critique your purchases.
then go to
He's
Amazon.com.
like, Rebecca, you bought 2 pairs of gloves? That's so fucking wasteful.
Yeah, one for each hand. Go to Amazon.com/shop/Crime Writers On. We earn commissions on qualified purchases. Also, I encourage you to sign up for our free newsletter.
Yes.
Because if Toby Ball got the free newsletter, he would have seen that we already used the tortilla wrap blanket as last week's deep dive recommendation.
That's right.
In fact, there's even a photograph of a woman wrapped up like a
Like a taco?
Like a tortilla with this weird blanket.
Well, she's wrapped up like whatever goes in the tortilla, like a burrito or a taco.
She's a lady burrito.
Yeah. I get that a lot, that I'm a lady burrito. I get it a lot.
I don't know. What? The show has gone off the rails like episode 2 of the Fox Hollow Murders.
All right, Kevin.
Yes.
Before we end the business section, very important question.
Yes.
Do we have any Patreon patron saints of the week this week?
Our Patreon patron saints are Lindsay O'Rourke and Elizabeth Holloway. Bless you.
Lindsay and Elizabeth, you're the best. Thank you so much for being part of our Patreon. I'm sure you listen to the readathon all the time. And we are glad to anoint you with the title of Patreon Patron Saint of the Week. And if you join our Patreon, fellow listeners, you could one day have that honorific as well. Right, Kevin?
Mm-hmm.
All right, Kevin, I'm going to end the business section now. Should I?
Yeah, fade that music out.
If you don't know about our flyer deals on Instacart, this message is for you. Flyer deals are like strolling through your favorite store looking for deals, but instead, you're scrolling on your phone. Because getting delivery doesn't mean you have to miss out on in-store deals, like the creamer that doesn't upset your stomach, or the pasta sauce that you can't not buy when it's on sale. Download the Instacart app, shop flyers, and never miss a deal. Plus, get delivery in as fast as 30 minutes.
Create your oasis with Thuma, a modern design company crafting simple, elevated furniture from premium, eco-friendly materials. Thuma's core collection, the classic bed, nest dresser, and pillar bookshelf, combines the technique of Japanese joinery with thoughtful design for timeless style and lasting quality. Assembly is quick and easy, taking just 5-ish minutes with no tools required. Explore the full collection at thuma.co or visit their flagship location in New York City. For $100 off your first bed, head to thuma.co. That's thuma.co.
So, Toby, one thing that I found interesting, and they keep hinting that they're going to get there, such as when we hear about a bizarre piece of tape where Kin is playing doubles with a couple of really famous tennis players. Like, who is this guy, really?
Yeah, it's weird that they're not any more specific. Like they sort of say, well, he's really connected in the art world and, he's from Hong Kong. He's got a lot of money. But, I didn't really have a sense of who he was or what he did.
Maybe like his LinkedIn? You wouldn't have a sense of that?
I didn't, maybe they could have AI'd his LinkedIn and just had that be an episode. But that was one of the questions I had the whole time is like, how is this guy scoring these front row tickets to these like high end, fashion shows, or like, where does his money come from? What does he actually do? What do they say? He's like a buyer or an influencer or something at one point.
Kin was in his late 40s, early 50s, hard to tell. He was from Hong Kong and he described himself as a big deal in the Asian fashion market. And in the hustle of London Fashion Week, he stood out.
It just seemed like one of those things where they could have spent 30 seconds and just been like, well, he was from this wealthy family, or he initially made his money through this. And it would have helped kind of give a sense of who he was, because he just seems kind of like this sort of mysterious older rich guy who's willing to fly Hannah around all over the place and potentially is stalking her.
Would it ease your mind if you heard that they had teased that in episode 6 they were going to explore that and they find out that maybe Kin isn't who he says he is?
Well, I feel as though it would have been...
You want a little more signposting about that.
A little more signposting, or even just sort of explain what Hannah's understanding of what he was. Because I'm sure Hannah wasn't like, I'm going to go and hang out with this guy who supposedly is a fashion influencer from Hong Kong.
He's supposed to be a buyer, right? For major chains of stores.
I think it goes by quickly.
Yeah.
But she doesn't seem to, I don't know. Go ahead, Laura. Sorry.
No, I was going to say, I agree, Toby, because it reminded me of like the Tinder swindler or something like that, where like I'm thinking the whole time, I'm like, oh, this guy's totally not who he says he is. He's a total con artist. Because I'm waiting for that part of the story, because it just seems so far-fetched that he's doing all of the things that he's doing without a little bit more context. Because remember in the Tinder swindler one, the guy was like in the private planes and all this stuff because he was living off of, the last person's money. But in this case, like, what is he actually getting from Hannah? It just didn't add up.
Yeah. I think it's interesting because he does have the whiff of legitimacy. Like, he really does. I mean, you can't just use money to get front row tickets to London Fashion Week. You can't. That's not a thing. You can't. Like, you have to know people. You have to be legit. You have, like, those seats, those front row seats at those fashion shows. It's like getting to sit in the front of row at the Oscars in the fashion world. Like, it's a big fucking deal. You end up in all these publications and they pick who gets to be there. And it's not something that you can just buy. I know that it's not. And so he does have this like whiff of legitimacy. And the other thing that's interesting to me, and they've started exploring this with some of the analysis, which we'll talk about, is that, as they say in the podcast, he spent a long time telling her. This wasn't just one incident where he told her, oh, I've been hacked, whatever. It was like a long time that he had all this suspicious computer behavior and that he was sending out emails to people that he knew that were a whole lot like the emails she received from him. And she actually saw some of these communications because she was a recipient of them. So to me, there is something there, or there might be something there that I am actually really fascinated to get to that turn of it. I am definitely going to keep listening to this because I need to know. But Kevin, speaking of the investigation, our top-level forensic linguist used to be the lead singer of Sha Na Na. Thoughts?
I watched Sha Na Na as a kid.
Yeah. Would you like to explain to the audience who doesn't really understand
Sha Na
what that
Na
means?
was a musical act that was 1950s based, like they were inspired by all the doo-wop and stuff like that, and they were on in the 70s. If you ever watched Grease, they were the band in the high school dance scene, and having the lead singer of Sha Na Na appear as a linguistic expert was not on my bingo card.
No?
That's amazing. That's amazing. And I forgot that Sha Na Na performed at Woodstock.
Yeah.
I'm like, how old is this guy? Anyway, I love that. And I mean, that's just sort of aside from the fact that, you know, what he brings to it, which is really kind of interesting analysis. And I don't know if we want to get into that. But just, I mean, was it Macklemore who turned up in season 1 of Suspect? Yeah. And again, you're like, what the fuck?
Yeah.
But yeah, at least it wasn't Bowser.
Well, who's Bowser?
He was the bass.
No, I know he was. I was just I wanted you to say,
sweetheart.
People don't know who Sha Na Na is.
No, our
I don't.
listeners
It's a
know.
gap in my pop culture from my childhood in
Because
Vermont.
you were in Vermont with no television, Laura.
I don't
We've
know.
established this.
They
Can
used
you
to be
sing
on
a song?
every variety show.
And Toby is too posh to have watched.
I watched Sha Na Na, yeah.
Toby has some Sha. They were the TV show, right?
Yeah.
What's a song they sang?
Oh, well, they do everything. They did like
It's covers.
all covers of like Splish Splash and
But didn't they write
Teardrops
some
on
of the
My
music
Pillow.
for Grease too, like for the movie?
I don't think so. Born to Hand Jive was what it might. I don't know if that was from Grease or I don't know if Sha Na Na.
Yeah, well, they performed.
I don't know.
They performed in Grease for sure.
They performed in Grease.
They were huge for a little while.
I mean,
they were definitely.
there was that whole 50s, like with Happy Days, like the 50s revival, Happy Days, Grease, all that
That
stuff.
stupid Billy Joel album.
No, that was like
I know, it was a joke.
So
American Graffiti.
Kevin gets so mad when I shit on Billy Joel.
No, you're off by 15 years. That's all.
Well, there was also a 50s revival in the 80s. There was.
Yeah, all right.
There was. I'm just telling you, there was. Anyway, Laura, that analysis, they have the linguistic analysis, we have the IP analysis. What did you think of those breakdowns?
I think that's super interesting. You know, I look at things like that when I do my work as a criminal defense investigator, and it's always fascinating to figure out like how you can determine where an IP address was, like where somebody's sending emails from. And I thought the addition of sort of analyzing the language in those emails and how this phrase or that phrase matched or didn't match, and how they could kind of analyze who might be writing them, how they might. I thought that was fascinating because it's one of those things you're like, is this junk science? Is this like lie detectors, or is there something to this? And I think there's something to it. I thought that was an interesting addition to flesh this story out and advance it instead of just, you know, going on more of different allegations and things that happened during this hacking. I thought that definitely added a little bit more to the story. Like, you were not here when you wrote this, or you were here when you wrote this.
Yeah. I actually have another theory about the analysis that I want to float out there because I've listened to all of that, all that's available. Did you guys hear the outtake, by the way, where they all said they wanted to be forensic linguists?
At the end of 5.
It's very funny.
Yeah.
Anyway, so my potential theory is this, if it's not kin, because they do say that a lot of the information that they got about Hannah, whoever did this, got it from her emails. They got it from reading her correspondence with people because you can scrape your email address and get all kinds of stuff. For instance, there are some calendar programs where you can literally write to somebody in an email, when do you want to do something, and then it will pop up on your calendar because it scrapes your Gmail or whatever, right? So what if we learn that people are corresponding as Hannah to other people later in the show? We learn that like her old boss has heard from, quote, her, right? What if the language stuff is actually coming from the writing style as gleaned from hacking their emails? Like, what if it's bots, like pulling all this data from emails, replicating that, using AI to replicate that language style. And I'm talking early AI. I'm not talking about now, because this used to, it's not like AI is new in this regard, or just bot behavior is new. That's how Twitter trolls work and Twitter bots work.
Or what if it's a maladjusted man with a lot of money who speaks English as a second language?
I totally understand that. I totally understand that. But if the supposition is that we think it's him because this person writes like he writes, if somebody has scraped all of his email, they have 1 million samples of his writing.
Yeah, sure. Yeah.
So that's something that just occurred to me that is unexplored, and I don't know if they're going to go there or if I'm just nuts thinking that.
It just feels like it's more manipulatable than other things. Like it's hard to manipulate fingerprints or things like that. And even like somebody with time on their hands who had access to those emails could just look for weird phrasings that this guy uses and just pop them in here and there, because it'll throw people off the track. I mean, I don't think that's too far-fetched. And now with AI, it'll take you 2 minutes. You just pop something in and say, make it sound like Ken, and it comes out that way.
Yeah.
Do you think Chat GPT has like a function where it's like, give me a phrase that wants to encourage her boyfriend to believe she has a rape fantasy?
Yeah.
Yes.
Jesus.
That's so fucked up.
It's super fucked up.
All that stuff is so fucked up. And the whole thing can you imagine, Kevin, what it would be like if somebody acting well enough as you that people believed it was you? Like, remember, Hannah's old boss believed it was her.
True. Because why would you doubt that at first,
she wasn't,
right?
quote, emailing them in Kin's voice, right? They must have believed it was her.
Coming from like her email address
and the emails that sounded like it was her.
Yeah.
How scary is that someone could be you and communicate with people that are actually important to your life and your career, and they could fuck it all up?
I mean, it is scary. I mean, that's part of like this podcast, is that it's not just a guy who keeps showing up at work. This is a guy who apparently has eyes on her across the globe, right? Like she's like on a whole other continent, and he knows that
what she's wearing,
that she got a black and white manicure, right? Or whatever. It is very puzzling, but it also demonstrates, like Lara says, sort of the reach of the technology these days. And that you also pointed out, Rebecca, like it just that these things are a tool, but even tools can be turned into weapons. And especially if you have the money to get like the highest end digital weapon, and that you're motivated, that you can like really wreak havoc in somebody's life. And that's what happened with this young lady.
I think that one of the things people need to understand is that there is a capacity for this kind of stuff to happen and for some of it to be automated. It does not have to be a person writing all these communications or it doesn't.
So you can get it like in the middle of your planned dinner.
Yes.
Just throw everybody.
This is what happens on Twitter. This is what's happening right now with the Blake Lively and Justin Baldoni situation. Is what happens is, and what happened very much in the Amber Heard, Johnny Depp situation, is that firms are hired to basically buy a bunch of Twitter accounts that exist already, and they're sock puppet accounts, and you can get them, and then you program code so that they all tweet stuff that is on your side to increase the perception that more people are on one side or the other side. And it works. It totally fucking works. It's how the public sentiment turned against Amber Heard. It's what's happening right now in the Karen Reed case to a smaller extent, but locally people are, pretending to be 50 people when they're one. And you can automate that. It does not have to be something that you sit down, because this would take all day for this guy, Ken, to actually manually do all this stuff. So I think people have to understand that it's not necessarily a guy who's spending 24 hours a day doing the stuff in order for it to be him doing the stuff. He could have bought the service that does the stuff, which I think is scary and interesting. So, Toby, they do discuss this, though, right? That in-person stalking and cyber stalking are not necessarily completely different things.
No, I think it's, they're different spots on a continuum, but they're definitely related. They're not separate phenomena. They have the same motivations. When I was working at the Crimes Against Children Research Center, one of the things they did was about cyberbullying, and found that some very high percentage of cyberbullying incidents were actually just extensions of in-person bullying that was happening at school, and it would just carry on. Like when they weren't at school at night, they would do it over the internet. So yeah, I mean, I do think they make an interesting point about, this idea of there's like real life and then there's like online life. Like that's not a real thing anymore. They're equally important, and they're equally sort of damaging and insidious. And in some ways, I mean, in her case, like Kevin was saying, and this is this is a Harlan Coben aspect of it, is she's in Sri Lanka getting her nails done and she gets a freaking email about it. Like that's like not just having somebody watch me, but having somebody get close enough where they can see exactly what was done when I was
Zoom
getting
on your chest,
manicure.
Yeah. Well, that's kind of where, Toby, if we had more context about who he was and his actual reach, it would make more sense to me.
What do you mean, Laura?
Well, like if we find out that he's like this billionaire person who can literally hire people to follow her around and report back to him or something, or like he tagged her phone with a tracker. Because I just feel like this is just a man that was needing validation and attention from this young woman. And he's clearly got some mental health challenges. And this insane manipulation was the way that he maintained the contact and connection with her as long as he did. So it feels like if I could understand a little bit more about who he was and the resources he had access to, because he must have had access to resources to be able to know that level of detail, you know, like, did he hire somebody to just follow her around? Like,
I mean, he also rented a mansion in Naples, Florida.
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
So like, I guess I feel like this is like what Toby used to say with like Occam's razor. Like, I think the most logical explanation, he's got some issues. This young girl he wants attention from, he hires somebody to follow her. He puts a tracker on her phone. He sends these crazy emails as a way to manipulate her into feeling sympathy for him to maintain this relationship. I mean, to me, it just feels like I still want to know who he is. Because it was weird at the end when they're like, we asked him about it. I'm like, oh, so you're talking to him. So like, what's his story?
It's a little teaser.
I kept thinking about Kill List. And I was like, you got to be able to go to the dark web and just be able to be like, look, I want to hire 5 guys to like follow her around and send her threatening emails and have it done. You know, I just assume that that's something you can get done for a certain amount of money. And if you've got unlimited money or just tons and tons of it, it seems like that wouldn't be hard to do.
Or I want to go on and hire someone to pretend to be a cybersecurity firm that's actually fucking with her more.
Yeah. It'll sound a little bit like Bellingcat, but it's not exactly.
Exactly.
If you don't know about our flyer deals on Instacart, this message is for you. Flyer deals are like strolling through your favorite store looking for deals, but instead, you're scrolling on your phone. Because getting delivery doesn't mean you have to miss out on in-store deals, like the creamer that doesn't upset your stomach, or the pasta sauce that you can't not buy when it's on sale. Download the Instacart app, shop flyers, and never miss a deal. Plus, get delivery in as fast as 30 minutes.
All right, let's do what we do. Let's let our listeners know, should they check out the podcast Stalked from BBC Sounds and Radio 5 Live. As Kevin mentioned, there are many podcasts called Stalked, but this is the one from BBC Sounds. Laura Bricker, thumbs up or thumbs down for Stalked?
I'm going thumb sideways on this. And it's not because there's anything with the production of the podcast or the sourcing or anything like that. I think for me, it's just a personal preference. At this point, podcasts about stalking, we've covered a lot of them. We've watched documentaries. We watched the docudrama based on a podcast about the same case with that catfishing case. So for me, these aren't the type of crimes that I find as compelling to learn about because we've covered them a lot. And so it has to be really different for me to feel like I want to follow a stalking case. And that's nothing about what happened in this case to Hannah or the way that they went about doing it. It's just, for me, it's just subjective. And I think it's not my type of case at this point. So thumb sideways.
Toby Ball, thumbs up or thumbs down for Stalked from BBC Sounds.
So I'll tell you, I really liked the first 3 episodes. The next 2 episodes, I was feeling pretty sick and was driving. So I don't know if that affected my enjoyment of them or not. But I didn't think they were as good. But the first 3 episodes I thought were really good. They reminded me of kind of like a Harlan Coben novel or something. I mean, and I don't know if that's part of what the attraction to me was. Is like, this is like the real life thing that like cheesy novels are kind of written about. But it does have the rich and famous. It's high-end fashion shows. It's flying to Milano, as they call it, and all these things. Like, it just seems like something you'd watch on Netflix randomly because you couldn't find anything else on. But it's actually this person's like lived experience. That to me in itself seemed kind of interesting. And then just following sort of the beats of the story, I didn't find it slow or tedious. Again, it felt like a novel where there's like some buildup. You don't start off like at freaking 180 miles an hour. Like you do some build up and you a little premonition and, this is about to happen. And then it kind of sort of insidiously starts ramping up. So yeah, I thought the first 3 episodes were really good. The next 2 episodes, I was worried about throwing up in my car. And so I don't know
Which
how
has
that
nothing really to do with the podcast.
how that
it made me so sick.
That affected my feeling about those episodes. But so I'll give it a thumbs up.
Kevin Flynn.
I think I'm a mild thumbs up. The BBC wouldn't give us advanced copies here, so we're stuck at episode 5. And I do feel like episode 6 is a big turning point because we have a lot of questions. I'm not going to spoil this, but it's obvious that there is one major suspect behind this. And so I'm curious that from a narrative point, if it ends up being that suspect, is that satisfying as a narrative? If you immediately believe in chapter 1 that the murderer is this person and it turns out to be that person, was that a great story? And so I feel like I am waiting for some surprise, which I am hoping comes. But as opposed to, just sort of like, if it's not who, then it has to be a really interesting how to make it, distinguishable. Who the who is, might also be kind of interesting. But I just feel like this is a possibility narratively to just fall flat at the end. Because there's Hannah's lived experience and her ability to get justice, and there is this podcast, which are 2 different things. And we need to get something different out of this podcast, which is a complete, satisfying narrative, even if that means that there's questions up in the air. Anyway, that's all just to say I'm a mild thumbs up. They got to land the plane, though.
I'm a very big thumbs up for this podcast. I love it. I absolutely love it. I haven't listened to a podcast in a long time where I was like, I can't wait to listen to the next one. And that's what this is for me. A couple of things really stuck out to me. One is that the reporter doing the journalism here is a great reporter. She's the one who broke the Cambridge Analytica story. She could be doing a podcast about that. And she's doing a podcast about this. And I love that. I love that the relationship between the main subject and our reporter, that they are basically family. I mean, they essentially are, right? And that she is turning all of her reporting muscle into investigating this thing that happened to someone who's like, essentially like her kid, like she's not really her kid, but they have a relationship that's very like stepmother, stepdaughter, very tight. And I love that element of it because it makes me care about Hannah immediately. If I think about I really liked Sweet Bobby, but I think about the work that a series like Sweet Bobby has to do to get me to get to know the person who's being victimized, spend a lot of time giving context and a lot of time to really make me feel connected and care. That was done in such shorthand here, and it could be because our main narrator and reporter loves her. So we just are sort of like, okay, well, we must love her too. If you love her, and I love that about it. It's like such a great shorthand way to get into the story. I find like Toby, the sort of very novelesque, Harlan Coben-esque aspects of this to be incredibly appealing. And I think there is a central mystery here, Kevin, whether or not he's the one who did it or not, about like who. Like I think the who is actually very mysterious and interesting, given the little tidbits of clues we've gotten. That they actually mentioned video at one point that I'm like, how the fuck did they... what is that about? That I'm very intrigued by. So yeah, I am definitely planning to listen to the rest of the series. I'm all in. I think if you like shows like Sweet Bobby, you really like this one. So I'm giving it a huge thumbs up. Right now, for me, it's near the top of my list for the year so far. And by the way, Milano, very frequent clue in the New York Times crossword puzzle, just FYI.
Along with characters from Welcome Back, Kotter.
Exactly. Characters from exactly. All right, that's going to do it for us. But before we go, Laura Brick, a very important question for you. Do we have a cat of the week this week?
This is so interesting. And I think I'm going to look at the latest news on this. I think it's still happening. So in Connecticut, we have a Scottish Highland bull who has been loose in Connecticut in the rural hill country. The last time they reported on this Scottish Highland bull, it was the talk of the town, had been roaming for over a month. They've been spotting this cow all over the place. The owner, Joanne, said there have been people out looking for the bull, but they haven't been able to catch it. And there's these pictures of this cow, which is a really cool looking cow, by the way.
They're so cute. The Scottish Highland cows are so cute.
And his name is Waldo. So where's Waldo?
Oh, I love it.
So Waldo is on the run. I mean, if they need a cat detective to go help find Waldo, I do also have a lasso that I carry in the back of my car. So I might need to take a little road trip if this goes on much longer. But either way, I thought this was a fun story. So cat of the week, Waldo, the Scottish Highlander.
Kevin, remember all those Scottish Highland cows on the way to Maya's old house that we used to drive by?
Yeah.
I used to call them the long-haired cows. They're so cute. All right, Laura Bricker, if folks want to reach out to you and say hi and maybe submit an animal or an animal story to be Cat of the Week, how can they find you online?
You can find me at Laura Bricker on Instagram and Blue Sky.
What about you, Toby Ball? How can you be found online?
At Toby Ball NH on Blue Sky.
Kevin Flynn.
I'm at Kevin P. Flynn.
You can find me everywhere, Instagram, Blue Sky, Twitter, etc. at Reb Lavoie. You can find the show everywhere at Crime Writers On. Check out our Instagram. There's some really fun reels there from the show that you should definitely check out. I really like our Instagram and TikTok presence, Kevin, is really good. People should check it out.
We're
but
good looking.
Yeah, mostly I encourage you, though, if you're still playing with Meta a little bit, just go to our Facebook group, join our Facebook group. Everyone there is super, super great. Get episodes early and ad-free and everything else we make for Patreon at patreon.com/Partners in Crime Media. I saw somebody say this week on a different Facebook group that we have one of the best values in Patreon in the world of podcasting. We give you a lot of stuff for just a few bucks a month.
Oh, yeah.
Our theme song was composed and performed by Tyler Gibbons. Our editor is the really wonderful Livy Burdett. The EP of this show is Kevin. This show is recorded in Studio C, the closet in our New Hampshire basement, where we also sing lead vocals on classics like Splish Splash, Goodnight Sweetheart, and Ramalama Ding Dong.
Ramalama Ding Dong?
Ramalama Ding Dong. I was just being classy, Kevin.
Yeah, it's very posh.
I don't know. On behalf of all the crime writers, thanks so much for listening. We will catch you later.
Those Shout On I guys are all over the place. Like Bowser is like one of the like big spokespeople for Social Security.
Was.
Do, 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 do.
In Crime Media.